I'm going to propose a question. What if the highest and best use of crypto is not the exotic financialization of Ponzi coins or thinly veiled lotteries involving monkey cartoons? What if continuously pushing those gambling dopamine triggers isn't the apex of crypto's utility? What if the killer use case in crypto is the same in 2023 as it was in 2009? What if it's still being money, but not just normal money? I'm talking about a parallel economic system based on ultrasound money that no central bank can manipulate. What if the road to mainstream salvation is not lined with expensive JPEG cosplay and decentralized amateur Wall Street LARPing? What happens when the PFP markets deflate and the DeFi players eventually succumb to regulatory headwinds only to be replaced by TradFi clones? I believe long term mainstream adoption lies not in these ultra niche markets, but in a future where Cardano is the architecture underpinning real world transactions. I also think that's a future we would be a lot prouder to be a part of. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss a brand new automotive project in Cardano. Yes, I did say automotive. A new document from the International Monetary Fund warning global regulators about crypto. Additional crypto regulations from the Bank for International Settlement. Well, proposed, suggested regulations anyways. And Brad Garlinghouse with a very strong prediction on the chances of the SEC and crypto being able to meet in the middle. If your germophobic side made you recoil at the thought of being buried in these filthy, filthy banknotes, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. This popped up today, breaking the world's first automotive project built on Cardano. Very surprising combination of words, but maybe not as surprising as this next sentence will be for some of you. The project was announced this afternoon at the World Economic Forum in Davos. I know some of you are throwing things at your computer or phone right now because you probably hate the World Economic Forum, but suspend your hatred. Just suspend any hatred toward the World Economic Forum for just a few moments so we can discuss the idea behind this project. And by the way, I don't know much about this project. I'm in no way endorsing this project. I don't know if this is a good project, a bad project. I have no idea. I'm just seeing what's on this thread and what's publicly available on their website. So I have no idea if this is going to turn out to be a legit project, a good project, a bad project. I have no idea. But it's an interesting idea. So let's take a look. Here's the website for this project, eTukTuk.io. That's eTukTuk.io. If you have no idea what a tuk-tuk is, take a gander at this image. Imagine a motorcycle with three wheels and a roof. So if you've actually ridden in one of these things, you already know they're pretty fun and they can be a pretty good way to get around town. And they definitely seem to have like small, very small displacement scooter engines or very small motorcycle engines. And there's not a whole lot of emissions control going on most of the time. The interesting thing about the tuk-tuk is that it is sometimes the safer option when compared to its cousin, the motorcycle taxi. If you've never ridden on a motorcycle taxi, they are super fun. Tuk-tuks, pretty fun. Motorcycle taxi, super fun because there's usually lane splitting going on. The driver will just drive in between cars, drive on the shoulder, drive wherever. It's great because you can get to your destination very fast, even if there's a lot of traffic. But you have to be a good passenger. There's a little skill going on as the passenger in the motorcycle taxi. You can't lean in the wrong direction because you're going to upset the balance of the motorcycle, usually a scooter. It's usually actually a scooter and the driver. And because you're lane splitting, sometimes if you lean in the wrong direction, you're actually going to hit cars that you're passing. So the tuk-tuk, even though by the standards of many people probably in North America and Europe, you're probably looking at this thing saying, hey, this thing doesn't even have doors. How safe is this? It's actually sometimes the safer option when compared to the motorcycle taxi. And it's still pretty fun. Not as fun as the motorcycle taxi, but tuk-tuk, pretty fun, I think. And actually pretty good way to get around when you're in a dense environment and there's tuk-tuks around. Usually a pretty good way to get around. But there's a problem with tuk-tuks these days. So, as you can see from this image, over 270 million tuk-tuk vehicles worldwide are emitting more CO2 emissions than the average car. Economies are collapsing as fuel supplies diminish. Prices have risen by more than 50%. Right now, 0 countries on the planet have a solution. TukTuk.io says they've spent the last 5 years working on a solution. So, you can imagine with all the things going on and some of the macro trends we've talked about on this channel, it's pretty obvious that fuel prices are rising in a lot of the parts of the world. On top of that, we've got the CO2 emissions thing. And I know this is kind of a polarizing political issue in North America, at least, probably in other parts of the world as well. Whether or not, CO2 emissions and global warming are things we should be concerned about. But even if you're one of the people who doesn't believe that that's something you should be worried about, if you've been in some of these cities where there are a lot of tuk-tuks, there's often also a lot of air pollution. The air quality is often not great. And the tuk-tuks, these are usually pretty old, small displacement engines. And like I said, not a whole lot of emissions control going on. And you can sit and look at tuk-tuks as they're sort of idling in a stoplight. And I'm sure there are better, newer tuk-tuks that do a little bit better, but your average tuk-tuk that I've seen, when it's sitting there idling, it's spewing out a lot of dark colored black stuff out of the exhaust. It doesn't look too good, and it definitely doesn't help with the air quality in these sort of dense urban environments where you see tuk-tuks a lot. So even if you don't believe in the global warming thing, I want to believe most of you do. But even if you don't, if you've ever been somewhere where these tuk-tuks exist, they're usually older, small displacement engines. Usually emissions is not a big concern. And the air quality, just the air quality in the immediate area around where these tuk-tuks are being operated is usually not good because of them. Even if you aren't worried about global warming and you aren't worried about pollution in the cities where these tuk-tuks are operating, if you don't care about either of those two issues, just take a look at this. This is a graph of monthly fuel energy prices worldwide from January 2020 to October 2022. And the price index is based on the price in 2016. So the price in 2016, they're making sort of the 100 benchmark. And you can see, back in April of 2020, they actually dipped down below that 100 benchmark. But since then, so they were down below what prices were in 2016. But since then, prices have skyrocketed. Look at where we are now. True, a little bit lower than the peak, but still at 259.86 versus 100, a 100 base in 2016. This is a gigantic increase. The notation down here says figures increased sixfold between summer 2020 and summer 2022 as a result of an ongoing energy supply shortage that was exacerbated by the Russia-Ukraine war. This is pretty problematic for areas of countries that rely on tuk-tuks for normal people to get around. When the price of the fuel increases this much, it can be pretty crippling. So, what's their solution to all this? Of course, electric tuk-tuks. They say the eTukTuk EV is built to be a more affordable and reliable alternative to traditional tuk-tuks, fitting seamlessly into the developing world. From the patented roll cage design to local manufacturing, each vehicle has been crafted with safety and sustainability in mind. I know you're thinking, where does the crypto part come in? Say hello to efficient charging, the next dimension of charging efficiency. Charging stations form the backbone of eTukTuk network and are built to be widely accessible, compact, and future-proof. Territory partners will provide the charge that helps the network grow whilst earning rewards. I know a lot of you heavily prefer it if I pronounce that whilst earning rewards. Become a territory partner and earn rewards as you power the future of transportation. You can tell already. If you follow projects like World Mobile, you probably know exactly where this is going. They say, launching in Colombo, Sri Lanka, we are building a growing network of charging stations powered by blockchain to make the revolutionary switch to EVs as seamless and affordable as possible. They explain that in Colombo, there are 1.2 million tuk-tuks for 21.6 million. So this is a pretty big market. They say 85% of consumer payments in Sri Lanka are made in cash, making it a cash-heavy society. In order to remove any friction for drivers and to improve their opportunities and their safety, eTukTuk's ecosystem will be powered by blockchain technology. Like I said, I don't know too much about this project. It's too early to say if it's a great project, a good project, a bad project. I have no idea. But I do love the idea. I love that they're addressing not just a real world use case that could make life easier for human beings on this planet, but even if you don't care about that, even if you have zero altruism in that regard, this is a much bigger market. This is a gigantic market. Look at this, 270 million tuk-tuk vehicles worldwide. 270 million. What did they say there were in Colombo, Sri Lanka? 1.2 million, something like that. These are gigantic markets, way bigger than animal cartoons, way bigger than thinly veiled lotteries that revolve around animal cartoons, way bigger even than this exotic financialization of Ponzi coins that we're so fond of doing. And we've done so fervently in such complicated ways. These, even if you only care about the economics, these are gigantic markets compared to those tiny niche markets. The number of people who are willing to go online right now and engage in DeFi, very small. The number of people who will throw gigantic amounts of money into animal cartoons, very small. And in my opinion, a lot of the rabid consumption in those two markets has to do with those dopamine triggers that are the same as kind of the gambling dopamine triggers. This is a different kind of use case. This is a gigantic use case that has to do with people's real world lives on a daily basis. You can make it cheaper for people to get where they need to go in these urban areas. And you can also increase the profit margin of the drivers. You can do those two things simultaneously, because refueling, according to the numbers they have on this website, refueling these eTukTuks is going to be, it looks like it's going to be so much cheaper than refueling the fossil fuel counterparts. We could easily get into debates about the initial cost of the batteries for these eTukTuks and the human toll that the mining for the minerals for the battery takes in places like the Congo. But the thing that strikes me about this type of project is that it's a real world use case. I don't think the EV part is the most important part of this. I think the most important part for crypto is that this is a real world use case. We need to do more of this. We need to start using crypto as money in real world economic transactions. And the programmability of a cryptocurrency like Cardano makes it even better. It's even better because you can do creative things like this. You can shuffle the money around in interesting algorithmic ways to make the whole network more efficient. I have no idea what their actual model is in this project, but you can imagine the partners who are putting up the charging stations. You can imagine them getting paid by the network for the charging they're providing, the passengers paying on the network, the drivers receiving their paying for the charging, all of those things. Crypto can make this a much more efficient network than if you were trying to send all these microtransactions using fiat. The IMF has laid out some recommendations for crypto regulation. As you would guess, they don't love us as much as we'd probably like them to. So they think of crypto as a new challenge. They say crypto assets, including stablecoins, are not yet risks to the global financial system, but some emerging market and developing economies are already materially affected. Some are experiencing cryptoization. Oh no, the dread of cryptoization. They say when these assets are substituted for domestic currencies and assets and circumvent exchange and capital control restrictions. That's what they think cryptoization is: circumvention of exchange and capital control restrictions. Definitely people in crypto do that, though. They say such substitution has the potential to cause capital outflows, a loss of monetary sovereignty, and threats to financial stability, creating new challenges for policy makers. Advanced economies are also susceptible to financial stability risks from crypto. Here are their 5 recommendations. Crypto asset service providers should be licensed, registered, and authorized. That includes those providing storage, transfer, exchange, settlement, and custody services, with rules like those governing providers of services in the TradFi sector. So this is pretty broad: storage, transfer, exchange, settlement, and custody services. You could you can imagine a lot of policymakers just throwing all forms of validation, mining, stake pools, everything under settlement and saying, hey, if you are a stake pool, you need to be licensed, registered, and authorized, just like in the TradFi sector. That is problematic for crypto for sure. They say entities carrying out multiple functions should be subject to additional prudential requirements. In cases where carrying out multiple functions might generate conflicts of interest, authorities should consider whether entities should be prohibited to do so. So you might not be able to do more than 2 of these things, more than one of those things. Stablecoin issuers should be subject to strict prudential requirements. We already know they're going to go after stablecoin providers. There should be clear requirements on regulated financial institutions concerning their exposure to and engagement with crypto. I think this is actually true. We've seen some very good arguments that normal regulated financial institutions like banks aren't quite prepared for the instant settlement in crypto, and they're not set up to deal with the lightning fast settlement of crypto assets. Eventually, we need robust, comprehensive, globally consistent crypto regulation and supervision. The cross-sector and cross-border nature of crypto limits the effectiveness of uncoordinated national approaches. For a global approach to work, it must also be able to adapt to a changing landscape and risk outlook. I think this last one is actually also true. Not wanting to miss out on any of the fun, the Bank for International Settlements has issued its own policy recommendations on crypto regulation. And Matthew Ploman has given us a great thread here going over the 3 big ones. Their document is called Bank for International Settlements Bulletin number 66. And here on page 3, they go over their 3 main lines of action. Ban specific crypto activities. They call this ban. Isolate crypto from TradFi and the real economy. Contain. They don't want any of that crypto contagion affecting their TradFi institutions. And regulate the sector in a manner akin to TradFi. Regulate. So they want to ban, contain, and regulate us. They would pick the things they really hate, ban them, and then they would just try to contain all of crypto so it doesn't infect TradFi. And then they would regulate us just like they regulate TradFi. You can tell a lot of these international institutions sort of think about crypto the same way public health officials probably think about communicable diseases. Finally, Brad Garlinghouse of Ripple gave a couple of interviews at Davos, and of course, he was asked, what are the chances? What is the timeline for any potential settlement between the SEC and Ripple? And he responded that the chances of settlement between the SEC and Ripple is kind of like a Venn diagram with no overlap, because Ripple's requirement for a settlement is that XRP be declared not a security going forward. And the SEC, and he says specifically Gary Gensler, we actually know this is true. Gary Gensler has said time and again that he thinks most cryptocurrencies are securities. So Brad Garlinghouse thinks the chances of settlement is basically 0. He does think they're going to get a judgment in single-digit number of months. So this year, he thinks they're going to get a settlement this year. And you can see some people are misconstruing this. Like this post right here says, breaking, the XRP lawsuit could settle in the first half of 2023, says Brad Garlinghouse. That's absolutely not what he said. What he said was that they could get a judgment. This is very different than the SEC and Ripple settling. Garlinghouse thinks they could get a judgment, not a settlement. I think this is really emblematic of the kind of adversarial relationship between the SEC and crypto right now, because the SEC's current position is pretty much unworkable for a crypto industry to exist. You can't declare everything in crypto a security, have impossible to satisfy regulations to do a security issuance and still have a crypto industry that looks anything like the one we have today. So I think Brad Garlinghouse is probably right as to Ripple and the SEC, and also as to the larger crypto industry, the whole crypto space and the SEC. I think they're two things on a collision course, and they both can't continue on the same course, but we'll see how all this unfolds. I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.